Welcome, Zoom. So let me just give you a little bit of an overlay of what's about to happen. I am going to, in a moment, invite our very first SCW student keynote speaker up, and that's going, yes, I'll introduce her in just a minute. I really like this new initiative. I thought it would be a nice way to end our time together and a nice way to bookend from the wonderful keynote that Disha started us with 10 days ago. So after that, we're going to have a toast. And for those of us in the room, there will be champagne set up in the back. So I'll give you a cue and you can go back there and get your glass. Folks on Zoom, if you want to join us, grab a glass of something or another so that you can raise it at the end of this. Okay, and then after that, I will have a few things to say, close friends, and then we will go on with the rest of our evening here. Zoom friends, saying goodbye to you doesn't mean you're not coming back for the games, I hope. So, okay. So, as I said before, we tried something new this year. I sent out a call to ask students who might be interested to propose me an idea for a closing keynote. And the student who was selected for this wanted to talk about community. And I thought after the year that we've all been through, right? What better concept, what better idea to reflect on at the end. So please join me in welcoming SCW student keynote, Mary McIntyre.
Hi, this is so exciting. All right. First, hi Zoomers, how you doing? Good? All right. Before I start, could we get a round of applause for the Zoomers? They've been through a lot this week being on Zoom. Like, let's give them some appreciation. Can you guys hear that? Okay, good, I'm glad. All right. Hopefully I don't cry during this like everyone else has. All right. So this is called Continuing Our Community. Hello. It's been wonderful to meet so many of you in person for the first time ever. For those of you who know me already, you know that I love to talk about growing up in central New York, which is where I'll start this conversation. I'm from Liverpool, a small city outside Syracuse. I've lived there my entire life, apart from my postgraduate high school studies. It's an ordinary place with grocery stores, banks, and offices. Like many of you know everything about where you're from, I can tell you which stoplights are a pain to go through and where to get the best pizza in my hometown. However, it's my city's attitude about writing that makes it relatable to everyone in this room. As a high school student, I struggled to pick my major for college. At the time, I didn't want to go into higher education because I wasn't quite ready to live on my own yet. My twin sister was there with me for almost everything I did. I began to realize that I would be without her for the first time ever. She couldn't help me deal with homesickness, making new friends, and the infinite amount of readings that I would have to complete. Living in Oswego meant leaving everything I knew so well, and I struggled to adapt to the change. Not taking my studies too seriously, I know, it's very practical. Without even disclosing my reason for selecting my major, I was met with a lot of criticism and discouragement from my teachers. And they said that I should pick another subject to study or have more than one major because it was impossible to make a living off the one thing that I really enjoyed. In Liverpool, kids grow up to be nurses, lawyers, and teachers. Writing isn't considered a career, but rather a hobby. When I finally arrived on my campus and became a college freshman back in 2016, I sought to change this. My first creative writing course at SUNY Oswego was taught by a woman named Donna Steiner. At my college, they created courses designed just for freshmen starting out in their major in an effort to encourage students to make connections. Professor Steiner was tasked with introducing us to nonfiction writing as well as what it meant to be a writer. Our group of a little over 10 people was lively despite our numbers. I would walk into room 314 in Park Hall and everyone would be complaining about the fire alarms in the dorms or telling a story about their pet hamster from their childhood. Securing my seat by the door next to my seatmate Abby, I'd wait for Professor Steiner to walk in and amaze me with whatever lesson she would go over that day. While I kept impatiently glancing at the clock during my history class or tapping my feet in impatience during math, time flew by during my nonfiction class. I knew I had chosen the right major. While I was recently fascinated with becoming a proper writer, some of my peers didn't share my desire in the same way. They showed up late to class despite warnings in the syllabus and brought cupcakes or ice cream as an apology. Professor Steiner laughed and said my classmates could just show up on time instead of giving the gifts. She knew that not everyone would be the perfect student, which was news to me. In high school, there had been so many admonitions that college professors would not tolerate the same kind of behavior that they were reluctantly accepting in our K-12 education. When we turned in duplications of our essays for each student in class to read, there were frantic searches for missing papers and misplaced copies. Professor Steiner handled it with grace, always, and she sorted out the issues. She quickly became my favorite instructor to work with because she knew how to write and taught us about life at the same time. It was her wisdom that made me feel like I was getting the most out of my education. Even if some of my classmates didn't take their studies seriously, my professor did. It was enough for me. Professor Steiner gave me some of the best advice that I've ever received about being a writer, and I'm going to share it with you all. She said to our class one day, find your people, meaning to seek out other students who had the same passion for creative writing and working with them in hopes of successful co-creation. Professor Steiner's suggestion didn't cause any major changes overnight. We were maturing adults, and it took some of us a while to step up and make the most of our education. Another helpful thing that Professor Steiner did to keep the focus on class was issue us a challenge. Each person's mobile device had to be turned off and sit face up on our desks. If someone's ringtone went off or a person got caught using their phone, they had to write extra pages for our latest assignment. At the same time, Professor Steiner had to turn off her phone. If someone's ringtone went off or a person got caught using their phone, oh, did I just read that? I'm sorry, I'm tired. But yeah, so I'll repeat myself. If someone's ringtone went off or a person got caught using their phone, they had to write extra pages for our latest assignment. At the same time, Professor Steiner had to turn off her phone. If her ringtone went off, we would be excused for 15 minutes early from class, holding us to a higher standard of paying full attention during class while offering an incentive made her classroom a great environment. I'm grateful for the ways she encouraged us to take our education seriously. Her teaching methods are why I was able to grow professionally. Professor Steiner's class allowed us to find our people. Soon we began to linger by the stairs, talking about assignments and cracking jokes, much like we do now. And the members of our class would often walk back to our respective dorms together. By the end of my senior year, I spent evenings in my dorm's basement writing the next sequence to my screenplays with my friend Chris. I was in a couple Facebook groups that were devoted to helping creative writing majors find work experience and keeping in touch after our classes together ended. I often attended literary journal readings and hung out with classmates to spend some extra time getting to know them. I never missed the yearly event about banned books on campus. In short, I wanted to be part of the writing community at my college. Getting involved on campus and meeting my peers outside of class not only helped me make new friends, but have people I could count on for creative advice post-graduation. The small group from my introduction to creative nonfiction class began to get even smaller as we continued our studies. A lot of my peers changed majors or transferred schools. By the time I graduated, there were only 4 of us left, myself included. Still, I remember my connections with my first writing community because of the chemistry we had and our willingness to grow. After sitting in 2 of Professor Steiner's classes, I knew that I wanted to become a professor too. This realization led me to my search for an MFA program and consequently standing in this room with all of you today. I'm sure many of you can recall your experience discovering Chatham, applying and then opening a purple folder in the mail. I remember the joy of receiving an acceptance notification and calling my parents to share the news. In my dorm room at school, I wrote down Chatham's decision date on my whiteboard, counting down the days until I'd finally select which university to attend. I scheduled a tour at Chatham and a meeting with a faculty member. I didn't take my college tour at Oswego very seriously, but at Chatham, I was determined to be the most cheerful person ever and ask a bunch of questions. Shortly after I booked the appointment, the country shut down and everything changed except for my expectations for Chatham. Instead of taking a tour of campus in person, I opted to look at it online. Rather than meeting with faculty, I was privileged to speak with Dr. McNair on the phone. And I had read her essay about what drew her to Pittsburgh as part of my research for my letter of purpose on my application and was finally excited to talk to her. After that phone call, I knew that Chatham University was where I wanted to earn my MFA. I packed everything up and moved to Pittsburgh in August of 2020. One of my biggest questions was how I would continue having a writing community in the middle of a pandemic. With classes remaining online, I couldn't make friends with the students sitting at the desk next to me like normal. I couldn't grab dinner on a whim with my classmates like before. Yet, I think we still managed to form a co-writing community at Chatham during the academic year. Many of us showed up to Word Circus, attended guest lectures, faculty readings, Sunday hangout sessions, holding space on the page, and other MFA events. We connected on social media or exchanged phone numbers. Some of us gave book recommendations to each other. Others congratulated us on publications and creative accomplishments. We got emotional as a group. We engaged in meaningful conversation, participated in workshops, commented on each other's work, responded to discussion posts, asked questions, shared our writing, and changed our perspectives together. In some courses, we dressed up for special occasions. We also showed off our pets or took the time to compliment each other. We created inside jokes and offered funny commentary on whatever was occurring during class. At times, we celebrated milestones. As a group, we opened our minds to trying something new, whether that was meditation or practicing a writing technique that we weren't familiar with before. Additionally, we trusted each other with our writing and offered up our insight during critiques. In class, we challenged ourselves to break bad writing habits and switch up our writing styles. Together, we pushed ourselves to work harder. We got personal and honest, letting our classmates see what goes on in our minds. We were bold and open to vulnerability with our work. All of those things made Chatham a great writing community, but I believe that the work still isn't done. We have so much that we can achieve together through constant reassessment of ourselves. In my sophomore year of college, I enrolled in a class about literary citizenship, taught by Professor Steiner, not knowing much about what the term meant. As a result of my projects that I completed, I defined literary citizenship as giving support to other writers and receiving aid in return. Being a literary citizen promises showing up for other people in the writing community to achieve successful collaboration. Literary citizenship means working with people who have the same passion for their creative work as you do and helping them reach more people than they would have on their own. One of the most important things that we can do to support other writers is buy their books. Subscribe to literary journals. Also, a reminder, we have the Fourth River. We should totally support that. Purchase reading material at an independent bookstore to make sure they can continue to stay in business. Participate in cash mobs. Cash mob is an event where a person can go to a store with several other people at a given time, and they try to generate more revenue for the store collectively. Each year, Professor Steiner's students would participate in a cash mob and bring their friends to the bookstore in town, which was called the River's End Bookstore. Amazingly, one year they generated so much money during the few-hour period of the cash mob that the profit in total was more than the store typically made in a month. 1 month. That's insane. And if we could create a cash mob to support a business such as the White Whale Bookstore, we could make a difference for them. You might be surprised about how difficult it is to plan an event. Take a bookstore reading, for example. Consider location, population, timing, advertisement, and content matter. My literary citizenship class took on the challenge of promoting a reading at the River's End. The store wasn't anything close to the size of the Barnes & Noble. It was also out of the way if people wanted to attend from out of town. The event took place at night, which was helpful to those who had class or were working during the day. The event around town. My professor asked my class to post about the event on a social media platform that used to have a huge population of people my age, but no longer did. That being said, my message on that platform didn't reach many of my friends. The content of the book also had to be something that readers would be interested in enough to physically make the trip to the bookstore. It was also important to note that some people likely had plans already and could make the event. As you can see, there are many factors that determine the success of an event. It's difficult to promote our work without the help of others. Part of practicing literary citizenship requires a willingness to accept that some aspects of being a writer are challenging and frustrating. But we continue to be literary citizenships because it's so satisfying in the end. I'm confident that one day I will be seeing all of your names on book covers and in literary magazines. I want to show up for all of you and make sure that your work reaches a vast audience one day. For now, many of us are just getting started with our careers. We don't have books on sale yet. But before we can get to the fun parts of being a writer, we have to work hard. I firmly believe that supporting each other can get us to a point where we accomplish our goals as writers. One of the best ways to offer support is to start getting to know each other. In doing so, we will also find our people. I hope you form connections with your peers at the summer community of writers or strengthen bonds that you already have. I would like to encourage you, each and every one of you, to make the extra effort after this program ends. Attend events on campus, exchange contact information with other students, make virtual or in-person plans with your classmates, and keep an open mind about the opportunities you might encounter if you get to know other writers in Chatham's community. Take the time to make your writing critiques thorough. Keep asking questions about a classmate's vision during a workshop to ensure they get the most out of their designated time. Ask for advice about your writing and brainstorm ideas with your peers. Share vision strategies and take breaks from homework together. Supporting each other inside and outside of the classroom is crucial if we want to improve the writing community at Chatham. I'd also like to ask you to learn about each other in the remaining time we have together. This could mean asking a classmate where they come from, how they learned to master a writing technique. These past 2 semesters, I've discovered that there are a lot of difference between New York and Pennsylvania and all the other places you are from. Our backgrounds influence us and are bound to show up in our work. As a result of learning about the little things in your life that may seem insignificant, I feel I know you better. If I know more about you, I can fully support your writing and your vision. Another important thing to consider is identity. Many of us have different traditions, mannerisms, and cultures. That being said, do your best to learn about the ways you can respect the members of our community. Read about LGBTQ+ history and how to use pronouns properly and misconceptions you may have regarding sexuality and gender. Learn about anti-racism and devote time to studying literature from writers of color. Eliminate phrases from your vocabulary that could be ableist. Listen to the lived experiences of your peers and amplify their voices. Support isn't just limited to academics and literature. It requires standing up for all members of your community and providing them comfort. We all deserve to feel like we belong in this space and that what we do as students at Chatham matters. Respecting members of the Chatham community can offer them reassurance that you care about them. Another way to support each other is to recognize that we all have different writing backgrounds. While our foundations of writing are similar and we all know about character development, setting, metaphors, and pacing, there are still some gaps we could fill in. Talking with all of you has made me realize that not everyone learns to be a writer in the same ways. Our education should concern providing equal opportunities to each other. I would like to propose making a space for our cohort to share resources, writing tips, and other information that would be helpful to us. The faculty within our community are just as important as the students. As you continue your education at Chatham, I encourage you to get to know your professors better. Appreciate the amount of time and effort they put into teaching. Take advantage of the opportunities they give you. While it's possible to find another writer to critique your writing after graduation, they put a lot of time and energy into helping us improve our work. Make use of their feedback and instructions. Show up to class with an open mind. When they recommend that you attend an event on campus, try to follow through with their suggestion. Support their work. They're writers too. Ensure that you take teaching evaluations seriously so they know how to modify their teaching styles and reading material to fit your learning requirements. Voice your concerns and ideas to notify the staff about your needs as a student. Remember that the faculty should constantly learn about how to support their students. Overall, find joy in being a student and let your professors know how valued they are. I'd like to take the time to discuss some common struggles that we may face as writers. I imagine that many of you feel confined to one genre. For me, writing anything that isn't nonfiction is rare because I want to focus all of my energy on one thing. In undergrad, I used to write plays and screenplays too. To become well-versed in writing, I made sure to study a little bit of poetry. Going beyond my own genre was freeing in the sense that I felt I could make mistakes. Sometimes I pressure myself too much to craft the best essay on the first try. And supposedly I'm supposed to be a master at essays and memoir once I leave Chatham, hence the title MFA. In the spring, I attempted to make a hybrid piece, and I think it made me more comfortable as a writer. It may take a lot to sway you to take up a new writing genre or do genre bending because you may worry that what you create isn't good enough, or you're just set with your current style. Challenge yourself to try something new. If we support each other while taking risks, the reward will be so much greater. At the beginning of my writing career, I arrived at college thinking that I would write the next success like Harry Potter. After a few weeks in classes, I began to wonder if I had to beat out every other writer for opportunities to publish my first book. Each person in the room with me was potentially the competition, and while we could be friends outside of class, I had to make sure that I would seize each opportunity and get published rather than them. One day, I was sitting in Professor Steiner's class, studying The Truth of the Matter by T.W. Moore. And when we got to the topic of what success meant for writers, I had read some of my classmates' essays, and Wilson was great at capturing our attention with detail. Hannah had a knack for conveying themes, and Meg wrote beautiful revelations that I couldn't quite imitate. I was amazed at their abilities and envious at the same time. As we listened intently, Professor Steiner mentioned that publishing books wasn't easy. She was saying everything I had been thinking. But suddenly I heard her tell the class that we shouldn't look at each other as rivals because of our desire to become well-known authors. Now I'm not as competitive as I was during those first few weeks of class. I recognize that writing is about community, not isolation. Still, every once in a while, I instinctively question myself when I see a classmate prosper with their creative work. I wonder, am I doing enough to be in an MFA program? While it's perfectly fine to assess my level of effort towards advancing my career, I sometimes have to take a second to remind myself that I'm so happy to see my peers triumph. Just because all of us aren't getting published at the same time doesn't mean that we aren't doing our absolute best. Each time one of us is part of a publication or gains access to a new creative opportunity, it's a victory. As our cohort continues to do amazing things, I hope you cheer on your writers, cheer on the writers within our community. If you feel pressure to be competitive or have your career go a certain way, I urge you to work it and do your best each day. Your own happiness comes first before anything else. At holiday celebrations and various gatherings, I usually dread making conversations. Beforehand, I joke with my mom, can I just get a t-shirt that says I'm studying creative writing? No, I don't know what I'm going to do after I graduate, and I don't write fiction. Of course, I never go through with making the t-shirt, but sometimes I wish I could. Many of my family members or acquaintances are misinformed about what I do as part of my studies or the career I want to pursue. They recommend studying journalism instead, and I politely decline their suggestion. Some don't question me further once I explain my goals because they can't nicely tell me that they think it will be difficult for me to make money. I understand their concern. The faculty at my undergrads said that writers were always worried about where they will find their next work, which is valid. Nothing is permanent. Still, I find myself having the same conversation over and over back home. Sometimes I try and wear my hoodie from the University of Barcelona to encourage people to ask me about studying abroad instead of my writing career. My Spanish major helps people feel confident that I will find a job. It's impressive to be able to speak a different language and I can help people according to them. I've spent so much time trying to make other people feel comfortable about my writing career. In the end, the hoodie only alleviates my frustration for a short period of time. Everything circles back to writing. I bet nearly everyone from our cohort has experienced similar exchanges to mine. Non-writers don't always understand what we do or why we bother with a career that often includes uncertainty and unpredictability. They fail to realize that our jobs have more in common with them than they think. We rely on connections, work in offices, and hope to advance as we become more experienced in our field like they do. The misconception may have to do with the fact that writing is not seen as serious work unless your books are incredibly well known and sell out of stores quickly on their release date. Relating to each other about writer struggles is another way we can form connections. I can always vent to my close family and friends who support my work, but even that has its limits because my supporters don't completely understand the writing life. Since we all comprehend the challenges of writing for a career, I think it could be beneficial to have discussions about the problems that we encounter, such as not being taken as seriously as perhaps a chemist or an engineer. Talking about why the value of our writing is not as easily understood as the worth of achievements in other careers could be in feeling understood. It's satisfying to know that I'm not alone with the feeling that my successes are sometimes undervalued. Helping members of our community should mean that we listen to each other about our struggles as writers and show empathy. Starting tough discussions can bring us closer together, as well as the support we need to continue aiming for our objectives. Adjusting to grad school is something we know to be difficult at times. Apart from potentially moving cities, the courses function differently in undergrad. While no one has to suffer through a math class, the challenges often present themselves. Before I moved to Pittsburgh, my mom gave me a crash course on cooking. To put things nicely, I was quite awful at it. Early on, I would make something like scrambled eggs that would be a little bit underdone, so I would cook them to the point where they were brown. If you're wondering how overdone scrambled eggs taste, the answer is not good. As time went on, my cooking got better, and I stopped having to crack open the kitchen window whenever something burned. Luckily, I've since graduated to making things like tacos. My cooking struggles weren't something I talked about with my classmates. And looking back on my unwillingness to admit my problems, I wish I had. Seeing that many of us are entering our second year in the MFA program, I think it's important to reach out to first-year students and check how they're doing. If I had been able to voice my frustration, I think my attitude towards cooking would have been better. Most of us can probably remember something we felt irked by in our first semester of graduate school. We know it's not easy to deal with said annoyance on our own. Supporting first-year students is a great way to strengthen our community. We have to remember that we were once in their position and probably wish that we could have had some helpful advice. So whether a student needs help navigating Brightspace, wants tips about adjusting to grad school, or simply is bad at making breakfast food like me, please consider reaching out to them and giving them a hand. One of the best parts about moving to Pittsburgh has been discovering the city. There's so many museums, parks, sites to see, shops, and restaurants. Whether you're from the Pittsburgh area or you're a more recent resident of Pittsburgh, there is so much to do and see. This year, we should give suggestions about places to visit in the area to new students or students who chose not to move to Pittsburgh until this year as a result of the pandemic. I think sharing our favorite spots with each other will not only be exciting, but another way to connect with each other and provide opportunities to spend time with one another based on our. Keep in mind that next semester is going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. I have to relearn how to be a student and sit at a desk instead of firing up my laptop for each class from the comfort of my couch. The luxury of being able to turn off my camera briefly when I sneeze will be gone. As much as I'm sick of hearing about adjusting to a new normal, it's our reality. Sometimes I tend to be an impatient person. I think it's important to practice patience with each other next semester. As we ease back into the classroom, keep in mind that there will be somebody that might be struggling with something you don't know about. And it may not be a simple transition to go back to the way things were before the pandemic, but if that happens, know that you aren't in this situation alone. I'm sure there will at least be someone else who feels like you do. I'd like to thank the Fab Five, which is Dr. McNair, Professor Shotland, Professor Scolanti, Dr. Wilson, and Professor Neeson, for their hard work during the academic year and for the effort they put into making our classrooms as fun as they could be on Zoom. Your enthusiasm is what keeps us going. Additionally, I want to thank Disha Filia, Brian Broom, Leslie Petrick, and Julia Spitzer-Castor for giving us great reading material, as well as running workshops over the past 10 days. Additionally, I would like to thank Caitlin Hunter and Cedric Rudolph and the rest of our guest faculty. Joe Bishotti has helped our program a lot, and I would like to thank him as well. After I finish speaking, I encourage you to think about everyone who has helped you get to the point of being in this room, whether it's a teacher, your parents, a friend, or an author that made you feel seen. If you can, reach out to them and remind them of your appreciation for them. We are indebted to our supporters and influences. I think often about how much Professor Steiner has helped me professionally, and I miss working with her very much. To the Zoo Pals, which is Hetty, Lex, Mia, Arista, and now Lane. I just want to say thank you for being amazing friends. I'm grateful that you're part of my life every single day. I adore you all to no end. To my peers, I have been so lucky to have the privilege of knowing each and every one of you. The support you've offered me has inspired me to push myself to complete my objectives. Watching you cheer me on makes me feel like I am worthy of being in this program. Seeing that some of you have expressed having imposter syndrome about being MFA students, I want you to know that you most definitely do belong here. Don't doubt yourselves for a second. I'm so glad that all of your paths have crossed mine. I really hope that you'll say hello if you see me on campus next semester. If you want an idea for a new poem, story, essay, whatever, I'm more than happy to spend some time working with you and practicing literary citizenship. As the world opens up more and we have more freedom, perhaps we can get to know each other more in person. During the time we continue to grow together, I want to hear all of your stories. I know they're good because we're all writers. During my time at SCW, I've witnessed so many wonderful things. Hugging you hello has made me happier than you guys will ever know. I've never seen a group be so willing to connect with each other, but that might be because we've been trapped inside for a year. When I arrived at the Eden campus, due to my clumsiness, I managed to injure myself within the first hour of being here. And that's a new record for me, by the way. And everyone that came across me was so supportive and we're like, yeah, it's cool that you're struggling in the middle of the hallway, blocking the way to my door and stuff. And I mean, like, they were all like, no worries. And there's not much more that you can say to someone whose foot is bleeding, but like, that was the kind of energy I needed. I've loved getting to know all of your personalities during the time we've spent together. From Professor Squilanti carrying around a rubber pig that makes squeaking noises, to being collectively horrified by the story Angels Among Us, to listening to stories about ridiculous marriage proposals and watching Brian Broom dance at the beginning of every class. It's been incredible. I haven't stopped laughing since I've arrived here. Whether we've been smiling at the content from a faculty reading or we've been engaged in a lecture, mesmerized by the strawberry moon, or pushing our tables together during meals, the sense of community I felt is nothing like I've had before. In addition to the information I received about the craft of writing, I've learned so much about all of you and what you believe in. I can only hope that I'll be lucky enough to learn more. At SCW, I've learned the difference between blackberries and black raspberries, seen a groundhog for the first time, encountered the bowling alley on campus, tried to identify some constellations in the sky, and spotted wildflowers on our nature hike. While it's important to focus on school, I'm also grateful for the opportunities to explore the Pittsburgh area and discover the world around me. For many of us, we're approaching our second year at Chatham. We'll begin working on our theses and graduate in spring. I hope we can use some of my ideas from today to make our MFA program even better. By holding ourselves and our professors to the highest standards, we can attain our goals and remain reforming our writing community. I know instead of dwelling on the experiences we may have missed, I hope we can all find joy in everything that is to come. Our time left at Chatham is short, but the memories and connections we've made can last a lifetime. Please take risks. After all, many of us wouldn't have stories to write about without a protagonist who is willing to take risk and make mistakes. Professor Steiner once told me that if we made a significant effort in our literary citizenship class to form a community, we would learn as much from each other as we did from her. I know that when we get to know each other better, we will learn as much from each other as we do from the faculty at Chatham too. Also, I've been told that when I smile genuinely, I have crinkly eyes. By that, I mean my eyes are barely open when I smile. Working with all of you gives me crinkly eyes, and I want you to know that. You probably have noticed that a lot of my anecdotes from tonight are about my time at SUNY Oswego as a writer. I chose to tell you about those moments because I want you to think about who you used to be at the beginning of your career, who you are now, and what you will accomplish in the future. I wasn't the most serious writer at first. If I wasn't required to turn an assignment for class in high school, I wouldn't write at all. The delight I found when writing wasn't about telling my stories to others and attempting to help others see the world from my perspective. I thought I could put words on a page and magic would happen. No editing was necessary. I've changed so much professionally, and I know you all probably have as well. Also, I brought up my experiences from undergrad because I grew to love being part of the writing community and the general student population at SUNY Oswego. I feel the same way about Chatham, and I hope you do too. Recently, I took a trip back to where my writing career started, and the wonderful thoughts about being an undergrad student flooded my mind. I intend to revisit Chatham after I graduate because I want to recall the memories I made here with all of you. In the same way that I tell people stories about living on Oswego, I know that years from now, I won't stop talking about life in Pittsburgh. It means the world to me that I was seen as worthy of being an MFA student here. In Pittsburgh, I'm allowed to be a writer. My career isn't considered just a hobby like it is back in Liverpool. Instead of acquaintances suggesting that I study a real major or silently rejecting my career, people listen to what I tell them about my creative goals and achievements. I'm free to love what I do. Some of us have started out in communities that sometimes invalidate our work because sometimes people don't understand what we do, or they're afraid that we won't be able to make a living. Others have potentially had complete support. My hope is that through literary citizenship and inter-community support, we can give each other the acceptance. We can change misconceptions about writing for a career and create environments that are inviting. These past 10 days, we have made a point of declaring our devotion to writing, which I think is beautiful. Let's continue our community together. Given that we are at the Eden Hall campus, let's put down roots and cultivate a welcoming space as a team. Lastly, one of the markers of a great community is tradition. I'm the first MFA student to ever give the closing keynote speech at the Summer Community of Writers. If the MFA faculty chooses to select a student next year to deliver the closing keynote, I'd like to start a tradition that the said student can maintain. I want to offer you a writing prompt to encourage reflection on your time at the Summer Community of Writers, which is, how did you find your people? Thank you and have a great night.
Oh, Mary. Oh, Mary, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to turn the camera around so that Zoom can see the room instead of me. Hold on, I'm zooming you in. Getting closer. All right, hang on. There we go. Okay. So normally I get up here and I say some very hopefully wise things about, our time here together at SCW, but Mary has said it all. Truly, show up for each other, listen to each other, be kind, take risks. That's it. That's all of it. This has been a wonderful residency. You also thanked everybody already that I was going to thank. So what is my use here anyway? But I do want to say my own thanks. I want to thank our guests, Monica Prince, Josh Bellin, Rachel Ekstrom, Sarah Shotland, Ellie Resnick, Demetra Gideon, Julie Silverman, Dakota Grilli, Caitlin Hunter, and Cedric Rudolph for their time, their wisdom, their attention. Let's give them a round of applause. To our faculty, to Leslie and Disha and Brian and Julia, wow, you worked hard. You were exhausted, I'm sure, but you gave every day. We are so grateful. I am so grateful that you agreed to come into this community and spend this time with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank Joe. Hey, Joe, you're the best. You know that Joe's not just the best here at Eden Hall. He's also the best at Shady Side. He's like my external hard drive. I wouldn't remember anything without Joe. So thank you, Joe, for everything. I'm going to invite everybody now to head to the back of the room and grab a glass if you're so inclined, and come back to the front so that we can have a little toast. And will somebody please grab me a glass? Like Matt Petrus, would you get me a glass, please? Thank you. Zoom, go get your glasses if you wish. Come on back. Mhm. Here they come. You are. Oh, well, I don't care. Just put one in my hand. Thank you very much. Okay. I've got mine. Okay. One more group of people I do want to thank. I want to thank everybody who participated virtually on Zoom. I did not know how this would work. I hope this would work. I hope it has worked. You guys have been so, you all have been so patient and game, and I so appreciate it. So here's a round of applause just for you. Okay, I'm going to get mushy for 1 minute. I had no idea how this was going to work, this being the pandemic year. I was shocked that you all came to Chatham once the world shut down. I thought, oh, they're all going to bail. They're all going to go, do something else for the year. And I wouldn't have blamed you, but you didn't. You came and you consented to create this new kind of community, and it worked, and it's real. And I'm so proud of all of you. And you also all know that I have had one hell of a year personally, and I want to thank you all for your kindness, the patience that you've shown me as well. This place is full of compassion. I would. So, summer community writers, congratulations. You made it through 10 days. Here's to the next, 10 years. All right. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. One more round of applause for everybody in this room and on Zoom. Yay. Okay. All right. So we're going to all break and have some dinner, and then Zoom. I hope you'll come back. We've got some fun party games, virtual style. At what time, Arista or Hetty? Are they in the room? 7 to 8 is the virtual stuff in here, right? Yes. So 7 o'clock. I hope you'll see some of you back. And that's it. I'm signing off. Here we go.